What's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 43 of PixlFeed Radio, and I'm here with my friend John Lilly. John, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here.
Of course, man. Anytime, absolutely. For those of you that don't know, John, it's a fellow marketer, freelancer. So he makes his own rules, does his own thing. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, design and a little bit of graphic design, I guess.
For sure.
And then we're really going to talk about his podcast, which is called Emo Dojo. But it has a nice twist to it. I'm going to let John talk about it, but it's pretty cool. You guys should check it out because it's very different from what I've seen out there. And, that's the whole point of this show, to bring people who started their own entrepreneurship, because, starting a podcast, that's entrepreneurship, man. It's hard work. We're just talking about it before we went live, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So before we get started, so why don't we tell people about your background? How did you get started? Were you always one of those people trying to start something on the side?
Forever. Forever. Since I was a little kid, my parents got divorced. I always felt like there was some money tension in either household. So I was just thinking, what do I do? So I would climb the tree at Christmas time and grab the mistletoe and wrap it up and put a nice red bow on it and run over to the Kmart store and sell bundles for $2. I would, back in the day, our cat would have kittens, and I'd put them in a box and wrap them up. Go take them to Kmart down the street or whatever, and just give kittens out. So yeah, I was always looking for a way to make income. The classic lemonade stand. So cliche, but actually, you hear about it. It's like, I wonder if let's try that. That was cool. Then the paper route and everything. So I was always like, there's always a hustle. I just wanted to be independent. And so sometimes this backfires. You have to be careful what you wish for. So by the time I was 14, I got my wish. I was kicked out of the house. So just that kind of kid.
Yeah.
And what I didn't realize at that time was that it planted the seeds for mental illness later on in life. And so working my way through jobs, had a family, then I got divorced, and then mental illness reared its ugly head. So up to that point, I'd been working with graphic design, big in the sign industry. And then that kind of just led to marketing, because once you know about promotions, design, selling, you're effectively a marketer, the various parts. Well, it eventually I would get diagnosed with one thing after another, and they didn't quite stick. They didn't fit. But I knew the power of labels, and I also knew the power of negative labels, like the stigma involved with mental anything, right?
Right.
In fact, a lot of people think of mental illness as mental health. You'll say, oh, the poor guy's suffering from mental health. I'm like, no, that's the good part. So, even the branding in that whole world, it turned out, was really messed up. Mm-hmm. Then podcasting came around, and I needed an outlet from my creativity, because I was working at a tech company, very sales oriented, just driven to make sales. And I needed something to practice my branding on. So I'm like, let me create a character, because of the stigma with mental illness. I'm like, I need a character. I don't want to promote as me. I needed some kind of avatar. So I get talking so fast I forget to breathe.
It's all right, man.
So I created I read a marketing article, of course, the day before I launched the first podcast. It said, audiences identify with logos that have a face.
Right.
Like Wendy's and KFC and all this other stuff. I'm like, I was going to have a podcast about bipolar disorder with a half of a brain that was colorful and half that was gray. Looked cool. People were like, oh, that's a cool t-shirt. Like, that's fucking cliche. I'm sorry. That's cliche, right? So, no, man, I whipped up something remember that happy face? Way back in the day when I was a kid, there's a yellow happy face. Have a nice day.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
I'm like, that's pretty cool. And I was a fan of Yin Yang, and I'm a huge fan of South Park, especially those little goth kids.
I love the goth kids, man. Right. They're my favorite characters.
So there was the littlest goth kid.
Yes, I can see it now. I can totally see it now.
Anyway, so you'll notice every time you see the logo, if people look up the artwork for the show, you'll see that's Emo Joe.
Yeah.
And his hair is always parted on the left. It always comes down on the left eye. So that was basically me squishing a yin yang, the happy face, and the South Park creature all into one.
I love it. I'm such a conformist. I don't conform to things. Right? I love them.
So, and then what happens there, right, what happens there is now once you have, and this works for any project, and I got this from playing in bands when I was a kid, right?
Right.
Is that you have to have like some kind of flag to march behind. So if you want people to get behind your thing, you need some kind of icon, some kind of logo that's like, whoa, I would wear that on a t-shirt. So that's where the whole that icon and branding came from. Well, over time, I realized that I wasn't bipolar. I'm like, well, shit, I got a podcast and people are like looking up to me and thanking me for helping me with their problems. Not a doctor, just a sufferer, right? And I'm like, well, shit, I got to get out of this. How do I detangle this? And I was chatting on a group. In fact, shameless plug for pod decks. You ever seen these things, pod decks?
No, I'm not. That looks cool. What is it?
Well, this one is called the interview deck. I'm not paid for them. I bought these myself. But the guy, Travis, who makes these, here, I'll pull one up. Pod decks. All these questions, right? What weird food combinations do you really enjoy? So, I mean, if you're stuck in a podcast, there's just like all these questions you can pop up there.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. You can market that for sure. I can market the hell out of it.
Oh, he does, dude. In fact, he's got a new app, the whole thing. Anyway, we were chatting on one of Travis's YouTube shows, and he said,
hold on. Let me slow you down for a second. Hold on. Let me reel it back in. So podcasting. Why podcasting? Like, did you grow up listening to a lot of radio, like talk radio? Because
I loved talk radio as a kid. I listened to all across the dial, sports, political talk, whatever was politics. Back in the day, political radio on the AM car radio, when I would ride around with my parents, they would cover both sides, so it wasn't really acrimonious. You didn't have to pick a team to listen to. It was just fascinating, like politics and mayors and governors and stuff like that. Wow, fascinating. So I listened to that, but what I really liked a lot were some of the early drive time morning DJs that had all the sounds and the stories and that did all the different voices.
Well, I told this story before. The reason why I love, podcasting, well, now podcasting and radio, it's like I grew up, when I moved to the States, I grew up listening to Howard Stern. That was the shit. I mean, Howard.
Totally.
And then
my hero. And I've always like, how do we form that? How do we like make our own version of Howard Stern show? Like it's always been a dream. Like, how do you be so good at interviewing and being so naturally curious and then build a team of like 6 or 7 or 8 rotating people? Like basically that's his band.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Robin and Baba Booey, Fred and all them. That's his band.
Absolutely.
The same for so long. And they do the shtick, they come up with bits, they throw away the bad ones, keep the good ones. And again, like a band, you keep the good songs and you just don't play the bad ones as much anymore. So for sure. And I've just liked the bombastic sound of, hey, you're listening to drive time radio. Like the thing kids nowadays think is fucking stupid and cringy.
See, I always hated that. And that's what I think. Like all the talk shows that I listened to was just normal people. When I say normal, they just talk normal. They didn't try the hard DJ voice that that we had back in the day.
I love like when Howard skewered that in the movie. Exactly. That's the thing. But so I was like, is that their real voice? Like, what are those people like? Anyway, so I got into radio fortunately in Concord, California, kind of a Bay Area city. They have a radio station that still exists at the local high school. It's got its own transmitter, broadcasts about, 30 miles in any direction, maybe almost 50 miles in one direction. And you're kids, you're like 16 years old and you have access to a real radio station.
That's
first to get to play.
You said the Bay Area?
Yeah.
What year was this?
When I did this was in the late 80s.
Oh, dude, you were like at the Mecca of my dream years and where I want to be. That's when fucking thrash metal was coming up. Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth. Like, if I could have a time machine and say, where do you want to go? I'm sure people will like to see historical shit. I'm sure I'd be like, I want to be at like one of the first Metallica shows I don't even remember the name of the
Keystone
bar.
Berkeley. The Keystone Berkeley was a little bit, right?
Yeah,
we would see this. It'd be like them and the Ruffians and this band Raven from
dude.
England.
I've seen the pictures and that shit just looked insane. Like, I've seen Metallica 15 times, but it's not the same when it was coming up, and they were all kids and
the venue matters, dude. The size, because this place was not much bigger than auto repair garage, let's call it.
Right.
They didn't set it for music, but so we saw them. Exodus was big back in the day.
Right.
Slayer would come up from LA a lot and play in those clubs. Yeah, a buddy of mine had a podcast called Thrashbacks, where all we did was like reminisce about old thrash shows.
Oh, dude, I could go on that. I can talk all day long on that.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, and that was part of the thing. That's what got us into it, because the local independent record stores would send over the latest independent thrash music from England to play on the radio station I worked at.
That's awesome.
So we had kind of like a little funnel. And since I was kind of a feral kid anyway, I would always hop on the subway and head over to the city on the weekends to see shows.
That's awesome.
So radio, and that was the whole thing. And I just had a passion for playing music and microphones and gear and just obviously talking. Talk a lot. So that's how the podcasting came around. And working for the tech company, I needed an outlet. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm having mental health issues here. I'm alone in LA. I'm working for a software company that ultimately got Trump elected. So I have all these conflicts in my head. I'm like, geez, let's start a podcast. Got the podcast going. Up till recently, just kind of been off and on. But then I got inspired by that Poddex dude, Travis. Really helpful. And also, where we met on poddit.net.
Right.
So simultaneously saw something from Travis. And then Brent at Poddit had a contest, and I won like a rock star account for life. I'm like,
that's cool.
Well, I'm like, it's hella cool. So I'm like, well, shit, if there's no other message for me to get my shit together, then those two things happening in the same week were the message. I'm like, all right, what do I do? So I stole the icon, the little yin yang thing from the old bipolar style show, because I like that little icon. And then I combined it with Travis's recommendation, like, why don't you call yourself John Emo? I'll tell you why not in a second. But I like the term emo. And I'm like, dojo, where we practice our emotions. Like, and then I just went off on a tangent. Like, instead of martial arts, let's do emotional arts. And came up with the belt system based on various things on emotions I've read over the years.
Yeah, I love the belt system. That's what like caught my eye right away. But let's talk about how you dig into the emotions side of things, because I think, I talked about it on here before. It's, mental health and anxiety and stuff like that. I think younger generations are suffering more and more about it because of everything around us, like social media and all that stuff. So I think you're doing a fantastic thing, and your podcast keeps growing and growing, obviously. So why don't we talk about a little bit about that, of what you have experienced since you started it and how you brought it, to everyone, open it up to everyone out there. Yeah,
well, one of my brain dysfunctions, let's call it, has been ADHD, heavy on the hyperactivity part.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always like that cheerleader for things. Remember, I don't know, back in the day, there was a guy running for vice president or president named Al Gore, who had something peripherally to do with the internet, and then he knew a lot about the internet. So he went out there and said, hey, I invented the internet. Later, I think he wanted to say he invented global warming or the fight against. So anyway, I'm that kind of person. Like, whenever I learn something new, I'm like, this is amazing. Other people should know this. This shit can change the world.
I thought that was just me being passionate about the stuff that I like. I don't know if I joke around that I do have. Here's my take on ADHD or what, or ADD or whatever.
Yeah.
And this is just my take. I know people who have like the real deal, and I say that I have it, and I know I do to a certain point, because sometimes I like completely check out in my head, and I'm playing a movie in my head about something that I'm thinking about, and people are talking to me, and like, I have no idea what you just said to me. No idea. Like, I get yelled at my gym all the time. I do group training, and I've been with the same coach for forever. And she screams at me. She's like, you've been gone for like 5 minutes, haven't you? I'm like, yeah, thinking about work. Like, I have no idea what you just said, what you told me to do. Like, I'm gone.
Right.
But what's not funny, but what's interesting is that when I'm doing something that I want to do and that I like, I fucking go into the zone, and I can go at it for 12 hours straight.
Yeah.
Like, nothing can stop me.
Yeah, that's called the flow. In this context, like, if people are interested in this particular topic, it's called the flow state. And so, yeah, we'll lose all sight of time and sensory deprivation. We'll just like be, and kind of that's what overcame me when I was doing the Emo Dojo idea. This all came together in one night. I'm a designer. I'm a graphic designer. When you see something in your head, it's almost like, oh, fuck, I got to get it out. I got to get it out before I forget it. Kind of like a dream you're trying to tell somebody while it's slipping away.
Yeah.
I feel that way about my ideas. So I had to slap it together real fast, go over to GoDaddy, buy some domain names, get Twitter accounts, hustle all this together. And I sat and looked at it. I'm like, it's pretty cool. Now I should figure out what the fuck it's supposed to actually be about. There's a really interesting book I read as a kid called Power versus Force: The Hidden Determinants of Human Behavior. And there's one thing it talked about is basically all this hokey shit I think is bullshit and not at the same time, right? Energy healers, crystals, all that stuff, right?
Yeah,
I'm a skeptic. I'm a practical, I'm a dude. It's like, nah, it's hokey. Anyway, I read a line when I was a kid. So, any of this go out in video, or should I describe it audio too?
No, it's on video. It's on YouTube.
Imagine you're standing with your arms out like this, and then you put a picture in each arm. I mean, like a manila envelope, and there's a photograph in each envelope. Okay, they did the study. 200 participants, without fail. When you'd walk up to the person and put pressure on their bicep, one arm would go weak. The scientists doing the research knew which arm was going weak because they knew which envelope had which photo, right? Here's what's nuts. The arm that stayed strong had a picture of Mother Teresa in the envelope. The weak arm had a picture of Hitler in the envelope. So the idea is that everything contains energy, right? Well, we've proven this. Everything is made of energy. But they're saying that even the energy contained in a photograph of somebody evil, if you're holding on to it, it will weaken that part of your body. Like, what the
you know what? I can see that, because you don't want to agree with, whatever that person did or whatever, right? So and you're subconscious if you're holding it.
But they didn't know they didn't even know anything about the pictures in the envelopes.
Oh,
the people holding them.
Okay, that's different.
So it's almost like it carries some mystical, historical, universal evil or something. Anyway,
could be, man. I don't know.
The nature of the book that caught my attention. Later in the book, he lays out the different emotions and how they vibrate at different frequencies. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. That makes sense. And then I compared it to a traditional martial arts belt system because I wanted to keep the colors kind of consistent. And then I just went across and said, oh, well, so the lowest level would be this emotion according to the scale, and work my way up to scale. So I just invented it off of that book.
That's really cool. And that's okay. That makes sense, because I'm looking at it right now and you have like all the colors and all the different emotions. But why don't you explain how everything, how everything's applied to, improve performance in your life in general and mental health in general?
So remember, we talked about labels and the power of labels and things like this.
Right.
So to destigmatize the idea of mental illness, first, I want to start calling it by its true name, mental illness, and talk about it more, and also talk about it in a not safe for work, far less clinical way. It's not the first podcast that does this, but it'll be the first that uses a little bit more comical imagery,
right?
And in a way that I think is to pull more people in. So anyway,
it makes it fun. That's what I like about it. It makes it fun,
right?
You know what I mean? And that's what it should be. Like, it should be a positive thing. It shouldn't be a negative thing. You know what I mean?
And here's the thing about emotions, that this is where my research, just my layman research, ended up here, is because, well, we talked about the energy and we talked about the negativity of labeling and things like that. But I'm like, well, whatever. I have ADHD. I've got emotional issues, blah, blah, blah. How do I prevent that? What is that? Well, it turns out emotions are a measurable electrical signal. They last about 6 seconds in your brain. You don't control it when they occur, but most people let it go and they don't notice it when it occurs. And then it can simmer, turn into a feeling. And the feeling will become a mood. And then moods can become actually mood disorders, right?
Yeah.
So my thought was, let's back it up the chain, try to identify the emotions as they occur, and then decide what you want to do with that emotion right then and there. Keep it, nurse it, check it, acknowledge it, move on, or whatnot.
So what do you recommend the actual exercise to deal with it? Like, for example, if you're having a bad day or you're dealing with something that's, I deal with shit thrown my way every day. That, that's my job.
Yeah. This is I'm in sales. I get rejected all the time.
Yeah. Like rejection, like waking up to your account with like millions in ad spend, just fucking banned for no reason, and then you can't get a hold of anybody at Facebook. Like, yeah, that pretty much shits on your day, especially on your first Father's Day.
Dude,
but that's a whole story
Happy
for another
Father's
day.
Happy first Father's Day.
Yeah, happy first Father's Day. Waking up at 7 a.m. to your ad accounts banned. But I got him back.
But getting back to the point about the how this would actually help your mindset is like we're talking about.
I'm a very emotional driven person. Like, I think it's like my I can't say the word, man. I try it. Like, I'm half Italian, half Spanish. That's what I'm gonna say.
Hey.
So I'm very emotional. Like, I blow up right away, and I've worked on it, now in my later years to like, before I will fire an email right away without even like caring.
Right,
now I type it and just sits there. Then I walk away and I come back and I'm like, you know what? Delete. I don't even send it. Now, when something pisses me off, I take it all in. I chill for a second or try to chill for a second, but I'm not gonna lie, man, I'm not perfect. There's those days where I just get something and I just snap. And it's just like, I can't let it go, man. And it drives me nuts because I wish I didn't emotionally react to things, because I would be better at what I do if I thought logically instead of just being, reacting to things.
That's the thing. It's reactivity, right?
Right.
It's when you're reacting, you're not in charge. And most dudes that I know, we like to be in charge.
Right.
It's not to say that that's the important thing to be or anything like that. I'm just saying we like to be in charge of at least ourselves.
Right.
And you get smacked by an emotion that you didn't see coming, and it becomes a feeling. It fucking sucks, man, because it'll throw you all off your rail.
It'll throw me off for hours a day. Like, something will happen and will just linger in there. I mean, you really want to fuck with me? Let me have a fight with my wife or girlfriend, whatever. And if it's something that really got to me, man, I'm the kind of just holds on to it.
Feelings that in a way that nobody else can. And nobody,
it's not even that.
Or cares. Nobody on the internet understands or cares, but you've now been fucking speared in the heart. It's like, fuck. So anyway,
it's not even like that. I'm just talking about like just stupid arguments, just stupid arguments. It eats at me if I hold on to it.
It eats at everybody, and especially dudes, because we're taught to like conceal it or keep it down. Interesting though. Once I started doing this, practicing my own weird bullshit, eating my own dog food, so to speak, I'm like, well, how would I do the dojo? And one of the most important things I realized, because I have like severe depression, is that the emotion anger is actually higher up the belt system than despair and hopelessness. That's important for anybody to know. So if you're angry, just stop and remember, at least you're not in despair. At least you're not hopelessness. You have a higher level of energy and you're trying to put it forth into the world. You can elevate to understanding and love and so forth. But at least if you're angry, just stop and remember, it's not bad. It's just you're in flow. Don't stay there. Keep moving through. But remember, anger is still, you get guilty for feeling anger. It's a proper emotion. And a lot of those times, if you can catch the emotion as it occurs, you'll realize that, wait, that is the fucking right emotion for this situation.
Yeah, but you know what? I get what you're saying, but I've made mistakes where I react with anger. And I made mistakes that cost me both money and other things. Yeah. And it's just, I look back, I'm like, fuck. All I had to do was to keep my mouth shut and just walk away. But no, I had to just go right up, like snap, like not even snap, like angry side, like be a smart ass. And it's cost me a bunch of things. For sure. And that's what, as I got older, I'm like, all right, I need to
relationships
chill.
And jobs, like the two most important things in my thriving through life, relationships and jobs, I've lost them because of I wouldn't say my temper, just my almost my personality, but it's basically my inability to read the room and present the proper emotion at the time.
Right.
And then I have no governor. I just once I pick the emotion, I go straight there in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And if it's the wrong emotion, oh shit, I just burned a bridge.
No, yeah, I hear you. So what do you recommend? What kind of, exercises or what do you think people should do in order to, honestly, keep their emotions in check and be healthy and positive and all that good stuff? Especially when you're a stressed out entrepreneur. Like most people who are watching this, they're either, freelancers who deal with clients who are a pain in the ass, or, they're handling all this ad spend, which it's a weight on their shoulders when the campaigns are not performing. Or, they have bigger businesses and they got to deal with whatever happens. And it's a lot of stress. I mean, I know a lot of people tell me, I wish I could send you the messages that I get, like people that do what I do. And they're like, I feel like a failure. I can't handle this shit anymore. I'm like,
The
dude, it's not
imposter
your
syndrome
fault.
creeps in. Like, I don't think I deserve this. Why am I
Right.
here? Yeah.
Right. I get a lot of that from other people. And listen, I'm not perfect, man. There's days where shit's out of my control. And it's like, I got to just be like, hey, I don't have control over Google and Facebook, whatever they're doing on their back end. Right. That doesn't mean that I don't have my knowledge and I'm not good where I'm at, because, you know, when it works like it's supposed to, I can crank out the best results ever. So I noticed that a lot of people in our industry take it personally. So
I think that's the passion that drives us, but you're right. It's also our Achilles heel. It's the thing that puts us down the quickest.
Absolutely.
But to your earlier point, I think simplify is really came to be the thing that governs my life. It's move more. I'm not like saying, get on an exercise plan and do 3 reps of blah, blah, blah. No, that's way too complex for me. I'm like, just fucking move more, get up and move more, drink more water and be in the sunshine more. So I try just like 3 simple things for that. But my favorite quote, I think it's for people like us that I heard at a big group meeting once. They flipped the old quote of don't just do something. I mean, don't just sit there, do something. Gave away the punchline already. He's a Buddhist guy, and he said, flip that around and just, you know, don't do something, sit there. And it was absurd and profound, and I wanted to choke him when he said it.
Right.
But that's me. But I think that is the best piece of advice I'd heard that I would pass on to entrepreneurs that are caught up in the hectic, frenetic pace of trying to just make shit happen is sometimes don't do anything. Just sit there and feel what it's like to sit there, because I've tried to meditate, mindfulness, all this shit for.
Oh, I can't meditate. I tried it. That shit doesn't work on me.
I can't. I have no inner picture. When I close my eyes, I see nothing. So it just doesn't work. I keep trying, but the idea of just sitting there.
But see, I have friends who do what I do, and they're like, oh yeah, man, my morning routine, I wake up and I do 20 minutes meditation, and then I do like all these exercises, and I drink this and I do that. And I'm like, what do you do? I wake up, drink coffee, and fucking just just look at my phone on my computer and go at it, you know?
Yeah.
But I do exercise 6 times a week. I hit the gym hard.
Yeah, you mentioned the gym, of course. Yeah, that's important.
So
keep the systems moving. Like
I can tell you right now, I never worked out a day in my life until my 30s, like 30, 31. Because I was back in Florida at the beach. I'm like, okay, I got to look like a human being again. And you know, I was still smoking, I was still drinking, and little by little, as I got older, well, the first thing that I did, I quit smoking at 30. That was the first thing, just done. I used to smoke 2 packs of Reds a day.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'm done.
I was the same. Yeah.
And then I was still drinking heavily going out because I was single, you know, and living in a party town. So I would go out every night, have a good time. And as the older that I got, it's just, I know like my work was suffering. I'm like, I can't, you know, the older you get, your hangovers get worse. Right. And as much as I love to,
aside from the pain and the headache, you start to feel like guilt and like,
no, it's not even guilt, man, because I love drinking. I'm not gonna lie, I really do. It's a good time. Like, I'm a happy drunk, man. I have a good time.
Same. I kick my own ass the next morning, dude. I'm like, fuck, I'm a miserable fuck. I should never do anything again.
Yeah, but as I get older, it's like, even, you know, the hangovers got longer, and then, you know, the energy kept going down. And now, I mean, I just turned 40. Now, if I just have like a few beers, man, I'll wake up the next day and I might not be hungover, but I'm not firing in all cylinders. And that messes with your head too, because now you're tired. Yeah. You don't want to do work.
No, then it gets in your head.
And then you're depressed.
Yeah. Then the depression is, well, and then this is where it gets dangerous, because many people have experienced sadness and then actual depression. But sometimes then the depression will seem to, like, I'm not a scientist, but it seems to click in and lock and become part of your mechanism. And then it's like, oh, fuck, now by default, you're depressed and you're always trying to climb back out. That's a common thing I've run into, but this is what happens. See, this is the other weird thing. If you start a podcast, make sure it's in something that you like, because when I first started that bipolar style podcast, I was now engulfed in bipolar everything. I'm like, fuck. So you ever heard that thing, you become the average of the 5 people that you're around the most?
Absolutely.
Well, now I'm around 5 bipolar people. I'm like, oh man, this is miserable. No offense to bipolar people. I was one for many years, or may still be, whatever. But you know what I'm saying? Just if you're stuck in the sickness with other sick people all the time, it's hard. So I would say to anybody that's considering a podcast, make sure that once you get stuck in it, if it becomes successful, that you like what you're doing.
No, absolutely. And I think, back to the mental health side of things, it's like, I think what has helped me, what people should do is, like you said, like the 3 things, like move,
Yeah.
Like you don't have to go to the gym 6
Don't
times.
overcomplicate it. Just move.
Yeah,
Get
I
off your
mean,
butt, walk
listen,
out the door.
when I started hitting the gym, it wasn't hard like I do now, but you go and you do something and then you start to feel the difference afterwards. And I still listen, I hate working out. I hate it. Like every day when I know I have to go there, I'm like, oh, there's a million things I'd rather be doing right now than going to the gym. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy it at all. I don't enjoy actually working out, but I do enjoy the way I feel when I'm done. As soon as I walk out, I'm like, oh man, I feel good.
Yeah.
Like,
there's nothing to replace that feeling, really.
No. So that's one. And then, I make sure that my office, I have huge windows so the sun comes in. I mean, I'm in Florida, so, I got good weather and all that. And still, if I have calls, I'll take the call outside. I go and walk around the block out in the sun.
That matters.
Get some vitamin D.
Yeah. Sunshine and trees and water.
Yeah, man. I think that helps a lot. And try to eat healthy. I'm not the poster child for, healthy eating habits, but I try to eat as clean as I can, but I still, I have a cupcakes here and there, ice cream or whatever.
I'm the same way. And I found the best step to do that is, or for me has been anyway, the last 2 years has been to just make all the food. Like just don't buy pre-made anything. Cause I used to buy frozen stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, if I want a pizza, I got YouTube. I'm like, how do you make a crust out of flour?
That's so true. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, how do I make a soup? How do I make a roast? So I think that alone, and then kind of focusing on the qualities and packaging your leftovers, because then I don't have to go be crazy and eat a bunch of stuff I don't like. Now, at least I'm eating healthful nutrients in the food that I used to just eat junk food through.
Yeah. And then the other thing is like, if you eat healthy, your brain fires on all cylinders even more. Like even now that I don't drink, like I only drink like if I go out on the weekend or something. I have a kid now, so it's like he's only a year old, so I don't have time to go out drinking like I used to. So I just went, I think before my birthday, I went 2 months without drinking. Just I'm not the type of person who drinks at home. I drank, I have a good time, but it has to be social. When I'm eating healthy, like if I throw the cupcakes in there at the end of the night, because I just want something sweet. Yep. I can feel it the next day, man. Sure. I can feel the difference in my brain. Like I have like a little lag, during the day. So it's crazy how it messes with your mind. So it goes back to the table with emotions and all that stuff, that if your body, you got to treat it like you want it to. It's like a car, man. You got to keep it oiled up. And if you don't, you feel the difference. It's going to mess with your head. Dude,
yeah. I'm reading a new book now. It's right over here called remember, I'm a skeptic. I think some of this shit is pretty hokey, right?
Right.
This one's called The Emotion Code by Dr. Bradley Nelson. Anyway, he professes, like old-timey, like 1600s doctors used to say, oh, you're not feeling well because your liver's acting up, or you're spazzed because your gallbladder needs a little tweak or something. So in the ancient times, they used to think our vital organs were the things that caused the manifestation of our behavior and mental illnesses. And this doctor in modern times, this is like a repressing of a book like that just came out last year, 4.5 stars on Amazon. He's saying the same shit. And he's admitting, he's like, yeah, basically all of your ailments come from that. So in other words, what he's saying, if we're putting poison into our body and it's affecting my liver, like for example, if I drank too much, it would affect my liver. Well, an affected liver makes you angry in that terminology of that space medicine. So then you get the term angry drunk. And I'm like, nah, are you making this up or what? But I'll let you know what happens after I finish this book. But the idea that we're poisoning ourselves and those missed vibrations, those fucked up energies are the things that make us act that way, not the other way around.
Right.
Something else.
I can see that. All right, cool. So now that we got into the subject and we went kind of deep into it. So how are you growing the podcast since you launched it? For anybody who wants to start, this is what's cool about it. You can start a podcast about anything, man. And people, I mean, if you're watching this, that means that you're into marketing. Mm-hmm. Marketing because you're watching my channel, you're listening to this, and I've given you all the tools for, selling, marketing in general, drawing traffic and everything like that. So without all of that, how are you growing your podcast? Why would you recommend, if somebody wants to start a podcast, how do you recommend they grow it? Like you have?
I would first recommend picking a very small niche, however you like to say that word, very small market segment. Don't be afraid. If you like collecting stamps, what kind of stamps? Red stamps with women's faces. I'm obviously hyperbole here, but be very specific about your market. That way you kind of know who your listeners are going to be in advance. hopefully it's something you're really knowledgeable about and actually providing some value. So that's the first thing, is always, just because everyone is, you want to be, a lot of podcasts want to be everything to everybody, which is, it's just unrealistic, because nobody has that kind of money to market to 8 million different markets.
Riches are in the niches. That's the saying in marketing. Yeah,
exactly. So pick something. I would not recommend the mental health field, for example, because there's a stigma involved, and I rarely do video ones. Not because I'm afraid. I just don't want it to be about this face. I want it to be about the idea.
Sure. Everybody's different too. I mean, I just do it on YouTube because, you know, I like YouTube.
I love it. I want a podcast I can do this way, actually. I just don't know which topic it's about. But so, yeah, be very, very, very specific. And, then come up with a great brand. Like, I don't know how, whatever you think is a great brand, not a $5 logo contest brand necessarily. Something that really stands out and means something to you. Keep it simple. For marketers especially, think of the giant sheet of thumbnails you're looking at on a podcast board, right? When you're looking at podcast, the logo for the Emo Dojo stands out like a motherfucker, because it's just the icon on a red field. There's no words. Why would I have words? You can't read it when it's that tiny anyway. So just think of at each level that somebody's going to touch point with your podcast. So that's one. And I'm from the band world, the old music world. So I go old school. I print stickers, put them on my truck, band t-shirts, and coffee mugs. And I get those to whoever will wear them, because they're relatively cheap.
That is true.
Yeah. And as far as social media, I don't do paid anything. It's kind of a weird, maybe it's a principle for me. I just want the show to stand on its own merit. I think if you make a good enough show, people will find it and they will flock to you, and you probably get signed to Sirius XM or something like that. So I don't do paid for mine either. Like I haven't, I mean, trust me, there's ways that I know to grow this channel overnight, but I haven't done it because I made a challenge for myself when I started the channel. It's like, I want to see how long it's going to take me to monetize the channel. Yeah. And this is one killer way too, repetition. Like keep doing it, fresh new content, because that bumps you way up in the SEO much faster, and it keeps you up there, because SEO is like a robot. It's always looking. If you don't make a podcast every 2 or 3 weeks or every once a month, you might as well not make one if you're trying to get views. Consistency. And I've already seen it in my stats. It's like, at first you're not going to get shit. So don't even bother looking at, I look at stats because I'm so, you know, that's what I do. I'm obsessed with stats, but yeah, you got to, if you're not me, just don't even bother looking at them, because you're not going to see anything for the first like 30 episodes. And then you're going to see a little, let's just say me, Christian's serious about this. And you see a little first, you know, bump in the algorithm. It's like, okay, I'll give him a little dopamine hit. And then you keep going, there's a second dopamine hit. That's exactly how YouTube does it too. It's like, okay, you got 35 minutes on, you're being serious about this. We'll give you a little reach. And then you see like the spike. And then, you know, the more you keep doing it, the spike keeps going up. But I think consistency is key. Like I was doing a personal one too, under a different name and everything, because I wanted to separate it from work. Yeah. But I didn't want work people to find it. Same. Yeah. Which, you know, they can if they really look, but and then I stopped because I couldn't do both, man. And just the time, and I wasn't enjoying the personal one, which sucks. I enjoyed this one more, which is crazy to me because I'm talking about work mostly, but I wasn't enjoying it anymore. If you don't enjoy it, it's okay to quit. If you don't enjoy it, just quit. That's it. Just stop, it's like back to the band metaphor. You know, if you're nobody starts a band to make money. I mean, maybe some idiots do. I've never, ever in the whole time I've played in music since I was like a little kid, I've never gotten with other musicians and gotten in a room and said, okay, how are we going to monetize this band? Nobody says that. It's like, how do you make good product? How do you make a fucking good song, put on a good performance, sell the best merch, focus on the things that matter, and people will eventually flock to you. So I would treat it like a hobby at first. And like you said, keep expectations not only realistic, but low. Keep them lower. However few podcast downloads, you think you're going to get 3 in the first week? How about 0? Just keep it realistic. Don't hurt your own feelings with unrealistic expectations, and figure out what you're doing a podcast for. I do some for work, which are fun, because then I get to, like, I think of it like a gym. Like I get to talk in the mic, I get to make sure the levels, I get to upload. So I get to keep in touch with the process of podcast making. But yeah, the Emo Dojo one, I'm trying to, like you, I'm trying to I want a fucking personal podcast that is actually slightly more than personal, that I can just focus on the one.
Right. No, absolutely. Let me ask you something. When you're doing, I asked everybody that has a podcast this, because I'm still trying to figure this out, even though that I read about it, but nobody can give me a straight answer. I'm just curious how everybody does it. How are you tagging your podcast? Because when I tag mine, it doesn't let me use long tail keywords like 2 words. I have to put them all together.
I do underscore, like
you use the underscore?
health.
Okay.
Yeah, hashtag mental_health. But that's not a popular, in this particular instance, mental health, all one word is a better hashtag.
Okay.
But yeah, the underscore works, but I'm not sure. I've never actually looked back, because most of our SEO that I look at comes through my actual website, which is also something I recommend. If you're doing a podcast, go get a free website, a Wix or something like that, or just build your own site so you can get your own traffic and your
just WordPress. It's free.
Yeah, and then just put it in a player. Like get a legitimate podcast host that you pay. I would not recommend Anchor just as a musician, because I know how Spotify treats Anchor and Spotify musicians. Anyway, if you're paying for a cool host, get the little player, put it in your own website, and start tracking that traffic. Because then you can create an email list. I'm huge on email lists. That's like
dude, you need to start. It's all I talk about the list. Every day, the money's on the list. I mean, you're marketing, you know this.
If they won't give you their email address, they're not your fucking fan. They already gave it to Facebook. They gave it to Google. They gave it to everybody in their own phone. They won't give you their email address. Fuck them. They're not a fan.
Nah, I love it, man. Let's leave it at that note, because we have to get up. We've been going on forever. I have to.
Yeah, dude, I really appreciate you. Good talker.
No, man, I really enjoy this. We got to do this again. Thank you so much for coming on, man. Everybody, if you're listening, make sure to check out Emo Dojo. It's super interesting concept. It's super entertaining. I really highly recommend it. And John, thank you so much for coming on again. And everybody who's still listening, make sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and then, I don't know, subscribe to the podcast if you're listening to the podcast. All right, John, talk to you later. Talk to you guys.
Thanks, man. Take care.
See you next time.
All right.